welcome to this presentation I have designed for the Project Green Challenge. This was for day 5, which is about climate justice and a topic that I'm very passionate about and would like to present to all of you. First of all, we need to understand what is climate justice. Climate justice is recognizing that the fight against climate change isn't only about environmental issues, it also affects people in regards to their social status, to their economic status, to their race, to in which place they live in. And climate justice looks to fight climate change, but from an intersectional perspective, which is what we are going to see in the next slide, which is what is intersectional environmentalism? Intersectional environmentalism is a movement that looks to provide climate justice to everybody from a climate justice perspective. To say, it recognizes that Black person living in Africa who is poor will struggle more with climate change and its effects than a white man living in the US, for example. Here is an example of how different factors contribute to climate change consequences. If the slide would just change, please. Okay, so this is an example from the US, where in the first side of the picture, you have how much air pollution each race emits, with white being the largest emitter of air pollution. However, white people are the ones that consume less contaminated air, and this is a side effect of racism, systemic oppression, and racial injustices that have been installed against Latinx, Black, and Indigenous people, also known as BIPOC communities, which affects everyone. And that is what climate justice wants to fight. Now, enough talking about the US, because yes, Green Project Challenge is based in the US, but we're living in Mexico. So how does climate injustice look like for Mexico? Well, in Mexico, we're battling a lot of issues. It's one of the perks of being a third world country, but two of the main issues that have its effects on fighting climate change are racism, in which a person's life quality decreases on the basis of their race and or ethnicity. And we also have classism, which is very rooted in Mexican society, when we value people more when they make more money than when they have less money. And of course, we also have misogyny. Fantastic. Now, an example of climate injustice that I would like to point out, and I feel that sometimes doesn't get recognized enough as it should, or that we have learned to take it as a joke, is the situation happening in Rio Alto Atoyac, which, as you know, this Rio provides water for 17 municipalities in the state of Puebla. And one of the rich places affected by the situation of Rio Atoyac is Lomas de Angelopolis. But this is an example on how your economic status and where you're located is going to affect how you deal with climate change, or contamination and environmental issues, because the worst that is going to happen to people in Lomas de Angelopolis, which have enough economic resources to find a solution, is that maybe the river will flood and yes, dirty their living space, but it's something that they can solve easily. Yeah, maybe the air around them will smell bad for a period of the year, which is not nice, but it is a livable issue with. Here in the image from Google Maps, you have San Martin Texmelucan, which represents all the nearby municipalities that have to live with the consequences of the contamination happening in Rio Alto Atoyac. These municipalities and people living there have had their life and living conditions threatened due to man-made contamination. People living there have acquired DNA mutations that have caused a rise in illnesses such as leukemia, anemia, or renal deficiencies. The cattle, which is their main way of living, cattle and crops, are dying, so their livelihood is being threatened. Given that they don't have water to feed their cattle or to plant their plants with, now they do not have money to make income. And on a bigger picture, what does climate injustice look like for the world? Now here we have a map of the carbon dioxide emissions per country. This is a little bit old. This is from 2017, because in 2018, Mexico was the #1 polluter of carbon emissions in Latin America. By looking at this map, by looking at the countries that emit the most carbon dioxide and that contaminate the most, one would think that these are the countries that are most affected by climate change. However, that is not true, because we live in an unjust world. The reality is that undeveloped and developing countries, which is a nice term for third world countries, are the ones that see these effects more radically, because they do not count with the economic resources or the infrastructure to deal with these issues. As we just saw, Lomas de Angelopolis, which are rich people, can find an easy solution to their problem. But people in remote parts of Latin America, of Eastern Asia, of Africa, who do not have enough money to even maintain themselves, of course cannot deal with the reality of climate change, are going to be deeply affected by it. Now, how do we find climate justice and how do we achieve these? First of all, we need to become conscious consumers, because as a consumer, we have the power of demanding brands and companies what we need to see. You have the decision of whether or not you buy products from a company that is not only bad for the environment, but that is known for paying women less than they do men, or for paying Black and people of color less than they do their white counterparts. So if companies start seeing that we want to consume from companies that are ethical towards the environment and that are also just towards the people that work for them, then that is what they're going to start doing. They're going to become sustainable companies. And that is the power we have as consumers. Second, we need to pressure our representatives into creating and implementing laws that are good for climate change. Sadly, we live in a very adult-centric world in which nowadays we're rather young, and the people in power, senators, governors, they are the ones making these decisions. But as people living in their city, we have the power to demand what we want to see from them, and we have to do it. Otherwise, they're just going to turn a blind eye on the issue and just ignore it, because that's what's best for them. 3, we can work alongside organizations and groups to create and develop our own projects that work towards climate justice. Now I have the fortune of working with Youth for Climate, which is why I'm doing this project and which is why I joined Project Green Challenge, and it has been a rather eye-opening experience, and it has been very inspirational. But there are countless groups. If not TEC, you have other schools that have spaces that provide young people the ability to express their creativeness and their passion towards issues they care about, which in my case is climate justice and climate change. Now, something that I would like to talk about, which would be a huge, huge, huge step towards achieving climate justice, not only in Mexico, but in Latin America, is the Escazú Accord, in which several countries in Latin America have already signed it. However, if we want to make it a reality and if we want to apply it to our constitution and make it legal, first of all, protects and our sides. But people don't realize it because we don't have this transparency on how treaties and projects affect our environment and the world we live in. And third of all, which I also believe is very important, that if you're living in a certain zone or environmental zone where the government is planning to install a project, they have to consult you and ask the citizens whether they want that to be done or not, which I think is very important and gives us the place we deserve in the making of decisions. But how do we make climate justice a reality? And this is going back to point 2 on achieving climate justice. And it is pressuring our representatives, really, really pressuring our representatives. I'm not saying you should harass your representatives, but maybe you could pressure them and strongly advise them to make this a reality. Here is the 3 senators that Puebla sends to the Supreme Court. If you're not from Puebla, you can look up the senators from your state. And here is their contact information, in which it's that easy. You can just send them an email like, hey, dude, you need to do this. I don't like how this is happening. You need to sign Escazú. When is Escazú going to be ratified? Because that is the power we have. And we can. So, yay, that's fun. So to end this presentation, this is, in a nutshell, what climate justice is about. And we want climate justice. We deserve climate justice, and we want it now. Thank you very much.